Welcome to day 3 of our conference. It's sad that we've reached the last day of the conference, but I feel sure that we'll all still be keeping in touch and connecting after the conference has ended. Regarding our program, we have a professional development workshop coming up in a few minutes. You'll see there's quite a large lineup of presenters. In the few minutes that we have before the workshop commences, we can just take a look at who they are and what they do before the workshop starts. Celine, please.
These are all the biographies. In the previous page has all the pictures of all the presenters, and these are the biographies.
And they are led by the very energetic Zainu Mohammed. Now, earlier this year, the UJ colleagues from the ADC Access Program circulated a document called Shortcuts for Staff Success. I read it. I felt it was an incredibly useful document. It filled in the gaps in my own knowledge about certain things like Google Forms and WhatsApp groups. And I really felt that this document needed a platform for some kind of wider sharing. And of course, there was our conference coming up, and the colleagues, when asked, very kindly agreed to do this workshop for us in the form of a professional development workshop. Now, again, this workshop is conducted in the spirit of sharing. I mean, we know none of us are experts at online teaching and learning, hence the title of the workshop, which is a work in progress, some tips for improving online teaching and learning. And of course, we know that we should be sharing our insights, our knowledge, wherever we can do so. So if our colleagues from UJ are ready, we can call on you to start perhaps just a few minutes early if you like.
No problem. Kathy can start us off.
All right. Good morning, everyone. I am going to share with you today very briefly just a little bit about how we adapted our material for online learning. I lecture a module called Workplace Preparation or Coordinated and Academic and Professional Skills, which basically focuses on soft skills in the extended programs. So just a little bit of background when we moved to online learning, a little bit of the foundations that informed what we did with our material was that, as I think we're all aware, is that many students who enter higher education are not particularly proficient in the language of instruction, and they particularly struggle with reading, and the majority of students find it difficult to read with comprehension to grasp the material. Also, broader research suggests that comprehension is decreased when students or anybody reads on screen. And furthermore, in terms of South African students and the VARC learning styles, the majority of students are believed, in fact, not to be read-write learners, but rather to have significant kinesthetic and visual aspects of learning styles. Also, just before we went into lockdown, because we saw what was coming, we did a quick survey of all our approximately 700 students. And in that survey, as you can see, approximately 1/4 said they preferred soft copies and 75% of students preferred hard copies when it came to textbooks, materials, and so on. And we also just know from experience that in terms of contact classes, students very often fail to engage with reading material that they're given, and they rely on lecturer input and on the lecturer's PowerPoints. So we also then, once we had moved to online learning, we quickly surveyed our students, and we found that in April, when online learning started, Anywhere around 80 to 90% of them relied on their cell phones, smartphones for learning, whereas in general, fewer than 50% relied or had access to a laptop. Even by November, after UJ had rolled out the laptops, you can see that the majority of students were still using their phone for some of their online learning, although the percentage using laptops had also gone up. So it became very clear we were going to have to try and make the material as accessible as possible for small screens, for smartphones. So basically, very briefly, here's some guidelines as to what we did. We could divide it into 3 categories, if you like. The first is we chunked our material. Previously, learners got the entire unit handed to them as material, learning material. And what we did now was divided into subtopics, and they got chunks of each subtopic per week. So at the beginning of each week, it was very clear they had 10 to 15 pages to read, and that was the material for that week. We removed all extraneous information, only left the core kernel information in it. And we also tried to simplify vocabulary and grammar and so on and so forth. In terms of designing, we tried to make it small screen friendly and just generally user friendly. So we use 1.5 spacing, we use bullets, we use numbering, tried to make it as visually appealing as possible by using bold, underlining, colors, and so on. We also used diagrams, illustrations, pictures in order to accommodate students who were more visual in their orientation. And then finally, we also tried to ensure that the material was relevant. So we gave examples and so on that related to their lived experience at the time, which was lockdown and online learning. So the examples and the tasks and assessments that we provided, we tried to link into that in particularly. This was to hold students' attention and to facilitate their comprehension and their retention of the material. And so just to give you a very broad an idea, this is what on the left material would have looked like before online learning. And this is how, for just one page, we adapted it for online learning to try and make it more engaging for students. Now we realized we were relatively privileged in the sense that we always use our own material that we develop as learning material, and many modules rely on textbooks, but there's still ways in which to enable students to engage and read such material more easily. Again, we suggest that people chunk it. They indicate very clearly what sections be given to students to read for a particular week, rather than just being given an entire section, chapters for the term or for a particular topic. Again, provide additional short quiz, self-reflection, formative assessments at the end of each section, so the students and you can gauge their level of understanding and engagement with the material. Also provide additional examples beyond what are provided in the textbooks, make them relevant to students' lived experiences. So anything from logistics could incorporate COVID-related issues to statistics, all sorts of examples could have been made relevant. Also, where past experience indicates that you know particular topics are challenging for students, provide additional explanatory notes in the form of handouts. And then also we encourage students to use PDF annotation tools or apps that they could download, which allows them to engage with online textbooks, ebooks by highlighting and noting and so on and so forth. And just in conclusion, I think we were more or less successful in what we aimed to do with our students. When we surveyed them at the end of the year, between 80 and 90% of students said that the material was either very easy to read or quite easy to read and understand. And with that, thank you very much. I hope they are useful to you.
Kathy, we do have a Q&A section coming up. I just wondered, there's a comment on the chat, and if you'd like to address that comment now, or perhaps we can leave it to the Q&A. I can just to you.
I'm easy. I don't mind when we do it.
Angela, can I ask that you keep a watch on it and we do it after all 5 is presented?
All right. Okay, good.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sekho Matala. I'm the Senior Coordinator for Mathematics and also an Academic Advisor for for several. I'd like to share with you some mobile teaching and learning experiences that I experienced last year when the pandemic starts, and then we were not able to teach face-to-face. I relied mostly on the WhatsApp tool, the WhatsApp platform. And I thought for this short space of time, then focus therefore on the strengths and the challenges that this extended learning platform brought. Okay, what you will need basically to use the WhatsApp platform, as most of us might know, is that you will need a smartphone, of course. You'll need an internet connection, and you'll need an application itself, that is the WhatsApp application. So these were the key three things that were needed from the students as well as from the lecturer itself, that is myself. So let me go straight into the challenges that I noticed as students were using the platform. So first and foremost was that some students didn't have the smartphones. Looking at our challenges, most of our students are from poor families, and as first-year students, the first time they enter the university, most of them didn't have the smartphones, or some of them didn't have the smartphones. And it might be a challenge at the beginning of the year, therefore, to ask them to buy a smartphone, since some of them are from poor background. But we found that even those who had the smartphones that they had limited memory storage than some of them. And you find that another challenge was the connectivity problems, meaning they wouldn't have access to internet, or those who had access to internet, the experience slow downloading. It took them some time to download the learning materials or the notes. Okay, others, their smartphones had small screens, and that put an eye strain on them. Then the other challenge was that not all of the students were participating in the lesson. You find that only one or two students respond to your questions always, and when you insist on others to come forward, it was a challenge. And then you find that you are not sure that the students who log in, are they actually participating in that class, or they just logged in and then they left. Then one other difficult problem was identifying the sender of the message. For example, you ask a question and then the student responds. If you didn't store the number and then attach a name to that cell phone number, you might not know which student is responding to the message that you have asked, or what's the name of the student who actually asked the question. So it was one of the challenges that I also experienced. So one other thing, it was that for some, it was difficult to recover the content material once the phone becomes lost. So they didn't have the advantages of storing the materials on the other platforms. Okay, those are just some of the challenges that we experienced. But then looking at the strengths of the platform was that it was easily available and downloadable to most of the students. And the platform is suitable to almost all types of devices, including cell phones, notebooks, as well as tablets. Via this platform, students can send text messages, they can via notes, they can send images, they can send videos, they can send audios, and so on. And one other advantage is that students that comes to university already, they are using the WhatsApp platform. Therefore, no training is required to train them on how to use WhatsApp. The only thing that we needed to do is just to lay down the rules that, for example, which content they can post, which content that they are not supposed to post. So they must treat the platform as an ordinary classroom, as they were in an ordinary face-to-face classroom. Okay, the other advantage of the platform is that students can learn at any time and at any place. It doesn't need that they need to travel to their classrooms and so on. And one other advantage of the platform was that less data is used, and most of the networks makes available cheap price data to be used specifically for WhatsApp. So those were some of the advantages or the strengths that I've noticed as I was using it. And of course, some of the people like Jawas carried out a study, and that I've looked into, say that 32% of the students had problems with internet connection. These percentages represent the challenges that the students normally experience. You find that 32% of them had problems with internet connection. Then 32% have limited internet quota. But you can see that a small number of them, 12% of them, still prefer face-to-face learning. So slow downloading, it was like 12%. So that's shortly what I can say. And thank you so much.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Randy Christian, and I will be presenting an alternative for conducting online assessment by using Google Forms. I lecture 2 language modules within the Access and Academic Literacy portfolio, namely Fundamental Research Practice and Skills for Success. I also serve as an academic advisor for Extraction Metallurgy. This presentation provides information for using Google Forms as an emergency adaptation for online assessments. We are already aware of the global shift to e-learning caused by the pandemic. Here are some of the challenges identified to facilitate e-learning. We have the need for upskilling facilitators and lecturers in the utilization of e-learning platforms. And we also need a simple solution for conducting online assessments. The challenges identified to conduct online assessments are, we have too complicated processes sometimes on the e-learning platforms. We also have student needs that pose some challenges, such as the lack of access to technology. We need data-friendly content and assessments. We also need to be able to access assessments using any device and in any situation. We also have lecturer needs that pose some challenges, such as the need for less complicated processes in creating assessments, the need for ease in creating, editing, sharing, analyzing, and sending assessments and reports. Google Forms has provided a solution to meet these specific needs. And I've broken them into these categories to create, to share, to analyze, and to send. We can create assessments using less complicated processes. For example, quizzes can be created directly on Google Forms, or we can import questions from a word processor like Microsoft Word. There is also easy editing functionality using Google Forms. And because it's using cloud technology, it allows for any lecturer to edit or to modify tests and quizzes according to their specific needs. They can do this remotely. There is easy sharing functionality. We can share tests and quizzes via secure link to, for example, WhatsApp or other platforms, or we could send it via email to students. There is also automated analysis functionality. Data are analyzed by Google Forms and reports can be generated. Also, immediate feedback can be given to students upon the completion of assessments like tests and quizzes. Multiple choice questions have automated marking. You could input your memo into Google Forms, and you could really modify what you want Google Forms to do with that. And for things like multiple choice questions, you could have that marked by Google Forms, which helps us to save time. There's also the send functionality. Reports can be downloaded. You could download your data into a spreadsheet such as Microsoft Excel with ease. There's also graphs, tables, and other data charts available, which can be accessed and sent. I've also had students give me some feedback on using the Google Forms, and many students expressed a lot of joy in using Google Forms, and also an appreciation for its convenience and its functionality, especially when it comes to us using smaller screens like smartphones. It really does help. Just to conclude what I've been saying, Google Forms can be used as an online assessment tool. Students' attendance and participation can be tracked using the Google Forms. We track it using the quizzes. Students log on to WhatsApp, and then we track their attendance and their participation from the data given to us by the quizzes in Google Forms. Google Forms can also be used in conjunction with WhatsApp and Blackboard. It can be accessed from any device, any location, and in any situation. There is also immediate student feedback upon completing assessments, which is a real great functionality. And finally, it's easy collection of data and automated marking, as well as reports. So being able to manipulate this data given by Google Forms really does help in getting to know students better and to send reports and whatever else might be needed. Thank you so much.
My name is Namadabo Kone. My job is to manage about 6 lecturers and 9 tutors in the Academic Development Division, Access Center. And then my passion is with teaching. I lecture foundation mathematics. The COVID-19 tsunami came and hit us as contact universities very hard. And the shock waves also went to distance learning institutions. In a case studied in 2014, shows that teachers' personal and professional instrumental genesis cannot be independent, and that this double instrumental genesis of the teacher can also interfere with students' development. I'm here to try and share with people how we try to navigate through the issue of not being able to see our students in classes and teach them using platforms like, for example, WhatsApp. Now, in our university, we were having a situation where we were encouraged to use what we call blended learning. But because of our tradition of wanting to sit in front of students and teach using chalk and a duster and a blackboard, we didn't even try and start using those kind of mediums. But now that we were forced, we realized that, as our previous speakers have said, that WhatsApp is easily accessible to students. And we tried and find out a way of using it as a teaching tool. Now, teaching using WhatsApp meant a lot of planning. And that planning will entail doing one lesson twice. The first time you will be doing it at home, and this is how it went by. First of all, if as a mathematics teacher, you will have to plan and go and teach. But the mathematics that you teach, say you are doing one question, it will have maybe 5 different steps. And when you are using WhatsApp to do it while you are teaching, will be taking too much time. So you at home, you will first sit down and take pictures of each step when you are still preparing. And then the short explanations that will come in between the steps will be typed when the teaching is in progress. And when there are long explanations that are needed, emphasis is made through voice notes. Then this is a screenshot of a lesson in a WhatsApp group that we used previously. So if you can take that screenshot, you will see that the picture that has got 3 steps written is a third picture of the same answer. And before that picture, you can see that there's an explanation typed there. And below the picture, another explanation typed. But when emphasis is supposed to be made, then a voice note is done by the lecturer. Students are also allowed to voice their own question by recording a voice note or by writing their questions. Now, in our university, we've got a system called Blackboard, which has been in existence for the longest time. But we as lecturers, traditional lecturers, we were not using the system. The system provides opportunity for us to teach in it, for us to record lessons and put them in the system, for us to do assessments in the system. But we used to do things normally. So now, towards the end of the year in 2020, we were made aware that our authorities would like to see activities on Blackboard. So we need to have things that we need to work in on that system called Blackboard. So when we were teaching with WhatsApp, we couldn't really connect Blackboard with WhatsApp. So we had to improvise and use Zoom. There's a deficiency on the Blackboard because the pen that we use there cannot write symbols and things like mathematics, functions, and a lot of other things. So with Zoom, we will record lectures where students are live. Before the class, we'll email the link to students, share the link on our WhatsApp group. The lesson will be recorded, and we'll share the lesson and the lesson itself after it is finished on Blackboard, email the link to the students and put that on a WhatsApp group. Now, in conclusion, we tend as mathematics teachers to want to teach mathematics to students, which I think is wrong. We're supposed to try and teach students to do mathematics. George Soros said, technology will not replace great teachers, but technology in the hands of great teachers can be transformational. Thank you very much.
Okay, so, all right. So I'm Zaina Mohammed. I am in the Academic Development Center Access. And this is some of us, I think. And I tell myself every day, I must venture out of my cave. So I'm out of my cave today. This is me. I run the construction extended program in ADC. And I've got a nice team, and we teach 7 modules over a period of 2 years before the students go into mainstream. So for me, I think the reality is that students come from diverse socioeconomic conditions. This cannot be ignored, whether they are on campus or whether it's distance learning. And I think that is just the premise that we all work from. The crisis that we were in, the students, the expectations from higher education institutions, they look forward to it, not only the academic, but also the social aspects. Distance education requires a commitment and a work ethic from both students and teachers. And I think you normally design your program specifically for distance, and we did not do that before March of 2020. And the face-to-face, it just provides those vulnerable students with opportunities, resources that they never had. So it's quite a big gap that was created. My choice was really whether I was going to do synchronous or asynchronous, understanding that the students had major issues around data, devices, network, and then I just felt that they needed to be self-paced, especially in the beginning. The benefits would be that with synchronous is that we all are at the same time, we see each other. But on the other side, the students could only go on at 12 o'clock with their data. So my conscious decision was really to go to combine the two as far as possible. So on my learner management system, I have, after every unit, which has resources, required reading, I post self-test questions for each unit. So they can look at that and go through that in their own time. My innovation was to make sure that every unit has a complete lecture recorded with annotations and with my voice. And it's a complete lecture of 30 to 40 minutes. I break the videos up into smaller little parts, and then they can then watch that at their own pace and whenever they have time. Then I would follow that up with a live session, which is synchronous, which is based on both the self-test questions as well as the lecture being uploaded. And for me, I found personally the Blackboard, the LMS that we have was conducive for me to actually do and record it, and it's there available within my module. So it's just the speed at which I could upload things. Every unit was much faster, and I could track whether the students downloaded. But obviously downloading it is one part. So when I recorded the lecture with my voice and my annotations, it was basically to ensure that they can access that lecture, download it at their own time. Or sometimes I would have a video of myself starting it off, just so they see the face, not just a PowerPoint presentation. So I would have my face in the beginning and at the end. And then once in the next lesson, I would then have a live Q&A in my 1.5 session that I have with them. The learner had to have reviewed the recording to have any constructive engagement during that live session. And the self-test questions, which I used for every unit, would guide that lesson. And so I think based on my experience, I could gauge whether or not they went through it or not. And I would normally, I wouldn't spoon feed them because I would require them to have watched the video. Yes, obviously that's the ideal situation where everybody has downloaded it. But soon enough, once the assessment starts, they will know that they have to go back and watch that lecture anyway. It's there for them anytime they want to. And I find that when I record the live sessions, the length of the video becomes so large because it's got gaps in between where you're waiting for students to engage with you. And so even though I do record the live Q&As, the students go to the Blackboard lecture that I've pre-recorded, and they use the self-test questions as their guide. So I think based on the assessments that follow on every unit, I can gauge whether there's impact on the fact that I had uploaded, pre-recorded, and the students normally they are, because I created the structure for them from April 2020 and I followed it through into 2021. They know what to expect. Nothing is a surprise for them. And I think that for me was very important. So in conclusion, without the benefit of live interaction, I tend to communicate, over-communicate, send them more than enough messages all the time so that I'm always visible in their life, whether it's on WhatsApp, whether it's emails. And then one of the disadvantages is obviously student apathy, isolation. So I do take time to set expectations. I provide clear instructions. I try and my response rate is very fast to emails or WhatsApp messages, but the apathy can apply to me as well. So when I do the videos, I really put myself in the classroom. So I prepared as if I'm standing in front of a class. And we know that not every student can afford or has easy access to internet, devices, etc. So the ability to learn in their own schedule gives students the flexibility, and they can then engage meaningfully with the material that I provide. And so I just leave no student behind. And for me, when this pandemic is finished or during it, I think our humanity must be the winner. Thank you. Can I just ask everybody to open their video, the first 5 presenters? If that's okay, Ansela?
Of course. Hi, everyone. It's nice to see your faces. Zainu, would you like to open for a quick Q&A now?
Yes, please. We've got about 10 minutes, 5-10 minutes.
Okay, I'll just convey some of the communications from the chat. The first question was to Kathy, and Gracious was curious as to why comprehension decreases with regard to reading online. And also another quick one for Sejo about the rules or the guidelines for WhatsApp. What did you exactly do about office hours? And another one for Randy about the user friendliness of Google Forms. And what do you do when there's, those danger settings, warnings popping up and things like that? So can we just maybe take 3 of those questions?
Would you like to start in order, Ancilla?
Yes, please, Kathy.
Okay, well, I'm not really a language specialist at all. I work in soft skills, but in terms of the little bit of research I have done, I think that, first of all, there's very little neurocognitive research on reading on screens. The research has tended to focus on whether there is a qualitative difference rather than the processes behind that so far, although I'm sure that may change after the last 18 months or so. But basically, there are kind of 2 areas that people are focused on. The one is that simply the nature of reading on screens is different. People, perhaps because they're used to using screens all the time for social media, they read in a different way. They tend to read more quickly. They tend to skim. They leave out details. Okay, so they're not reading in an academic sense because that isn't the kind of attitude or mindset they approach reading on a screen with. And then the other one is perhaps more related to stimuli, that there are fewer stimuli that keep a focus and attention. So there's no tactile element like there is when you are reading a hard copy book. Also that just we know on-screen reading in general is far more physically taxing because of the effects on the eyes. And so that reduces the ability to concentrate as well. And also that there also tend to be fewer spatial cues for online reading, that things aren't laid out neatly. You don't get the overall sense of what a page looks like or what a chapter looks like. So you lack those kind of spatial cues as well. So that's the little bit I can tell you on that question.
That's interesting, Kathy. Thank you. Sejo?
Yeah, for the times when I laid out the rules, particularly for the students, I'll ask them to follow their normal timetable. So say if, for example, their classes starts at 8 o'clock, they must be available at 8 o'clock, then attend that class. And thereafter, if that class ends, then they must be available for the other class. So I've told them that my office hours is from Monday to Friday, and I'm available, say, from 8 o'clock till 5:30. And if they send any messages on WhatsApp outside those times, then I won't respond to that message. And when we meet in the next class, then I'll remind them again that remember the office hours. We treat this as normal face-to-face contact sessions, and that is how I manage the times.
Okay, thank you, Sejo. Randy?
Yes, thank you. I think with regards to Google Forms, it takes a lot of time to, educate yourself about how to use it. But most of the errors that we pick up with regards to accessibility is these authentication errors. And how I've overcome those is, when you're setting up your Google form, you need to go to the settings of your specific quiz or test, whatever you're setting up, and you got to check the settings there. For example, there's a setting there that collects the respondents' email addresses, and that can pose a problem because a lot of students might not have a Gmail account, or they just don't know how to use Google Forms. So I untick the box that collects those email addresses so that it just makes it easier for my students to access those forms that I'm sending. And the other setting that might pose a problem is also a box that you got to uncheck, which says limit response to or to one response. And this, poses an authentication problem because it might have an authentication pop-up that comes up and that sort of thing. So I uncheck that box and I don't limit the students to just one response. How I deal with that in the data section of it is I can see the times that the students are writing and I can see how many responses students have completed. And of course, I would take the first and earliest response of the quiz or test that I administered. I hope that helps with regards to how to overcome the authentication pop-ups or errors that you might encounter. Thank you.
It's all in the details.
All in the details.
That's interesting. Go to settings. Okay, that's definitely a learning moment for us. Zainu, there's quite a few questions for you about the construction program. I think some of them are asked.
I have read it, Angela, so I can
Okay.
respond.
Okay, great.
Firstly, Caroline, I think. Okay, the construction extended program is over 2 years. They do a certain number of modules, and then they slowly transition into the mainstream program in their second year already. So after their second year, they combine with the mainstream students. So the extended takes 4 years and the mainstream takes 3 years. So after the 2 years with me, they go into the second year fully of the mainstream program. That's my construction. The other question, thank you for the comment there about my strategy. The other one is the self-test questions, which I give them, deals with that specific lecture. And those questions are discussed in the live session. So they have to watch the lecture to do the self-test questions to prepare for the live session. That is best I can do. There are obviously those that slip through the cracks that just are there, but you know, I believe you don't plan for the exceptions, you plan for the rule. So there are always exceptions to how we would like things done, but there are still those students that just kind of do their own thing. I think that's all for me.
Okay, great. Thanks so much, everyone. I think let's go on to the next set of presenters now. Is that fine, Zainu? You have all been complimented for brilliant strategies, super practical advice. Okay, great.
George, you can share.
Sorry about that, colleagues. My name is George Mavunga, and I coordinate the Management and Humanities programs in the ADC Access wing of the ADS. And I also, in addition to that, teach marketing management to the group that does small business management. One of the techniques that I had to use, one of the strategies that I had to use when COVID hit was the use of voice notes in WhatsApp and also narrated PowerPoints. Narrated PowerPoint slides. And the rationale for the use of these strategies was that with COVID-19, obviously we had to, learning was by remote means. We were not in class with the students, and therefore there was a very big difference between how we learned and how we taught the students and how they learned, which is different from what the situation was in online learning. And in our case, we had met the students for just about 2 months. So we had just gotten to know some of them, what their interests are, the backgrounds that they came from, and so on. And so one could see that there was a gap in terms of the possibilities that were available for us to really help individual students. And therefore, we had to come up with strategies to ensure that our students could enjoy as much epistemological access as possible, given that we had just started to know them, and now they were learning away from us. And so we needed innovative strategies to ensure that they would benefit as much as possible from the content that we were delivering to them. But then one of the challenges was that both from our sides as academics, myself in particular, and many of our students, we are not digital natives. And so there would be some kind of a struggle, or there was some kind of a struggle in terms of what options to rely on for purposes of teaching and learning. And so for me, the easiest option was to switch to WhatsApp, because this was an application that I had been using for a long time. And on the part of the students, many of them, I assumed had also been using WhatsApp for purposes of their everyday normal communication. And so with WhatsApp, one of the techniques that I used was the use of voice notes in addition to typed explanation of concepts. So we would have our normal classes using WhatsApp, but then you would get to a point that you would, so to speak, would be a sticky point, a point that you think students might have problems understanding. And so instead of just typing explanations, one of the things that I did was to then make use of a voice note to really explain a point. So for example, if I was explaining growth strategies or strategic market planning, one of the areas that we look at in that topic was the BCG matrix, the Boston Consulting Group matrix. So I'll take a picture of the matrix from our slide notes, and then have a voice note that would explain what is happening in that picture. So, for example, I would.
For example, a family might own a general dealer shop, a taxi business, a liquor outlet, and a farm. We can place each of these into any of the quadrants shown in the BCG matrix, depending on that specific business market growth rate and relative market share.
So that explanation, that voice explanation, would assist the students in understanding what is shown in the picture. And then with narrated PowerPoint slides, as soon as we switched to online learning, the Department of Marketing Management insisted that we as lecturers had to upload on Blackboard PowerPoint slides, which were accompanied by voice explanations of all the concepts, just to try and narrow the gap between the lecturers and the students, as well as the gap of understanding between what is just between text and the students' understanding of the concepts in the text. So here I have an example of a slide in which concepts are narrated using voice.
Strategic marketing planning helps the marketing department to establish how it is going to form partnerships with other departments within a business in order to create value for the customers. These partnerships create what we call value chain, which consists of a series of activities or departments such as design, production, marketing, and delivery. For a gym, for example, such a value chain might consist of a marketing department, whose job is to advertise and attract customers as well as retain them. The finance department, whose responsibility, for example, is buying new equipment. Maintenance department, whose job is to fix broken equipment and ensuring that the gym is clean. And then the fitness department, where you find trainers who actually help the customers and clients on the floor. So the value chain and the interconnectedness, the synergies across the different departments, collectively, cumulatively, helps to create value for the customers through the partnerships that are established by the marketing department with other departments within the business.
So these slides, which are accompanied by voice narrations, as I said, would be uploaded on Blackboard, and the students could download them and listen to voice narrations in their own time, in their spare time, in addition to reading the text. And the hope was that this would help them with understanding the concepts, as opposed to a situation where they would just read the text, where some concepts might be difficult for them, and with limited opportunities for them to ask the lecturers, then that would limit their understanding of the content. So in conclusion, I would say that the use of voice notes and narrated PowerPoints seem to be an effective strategy, as students could go back to them in their spare time. And then the use of voice to explain concepts in either case helped with retaining the lecturer's presence in their students' academic lives. And from our assessments and how students performed in the assessments, it was clear that some of these strategies helped enhance students' epistemological access because they performed equally well as they would have, if we were meeting them face to face in the lecture rooms. Thank you.
Okay. Good morning, conference delegates. Welcome to my brief presentation on structure in online teaching and learning. I am the Senior Coordinator for Access and Academic Literacies. And in my portfolio as Senior Coordinator, I'm in charge of 2 language modules that run across 3 campuses. I teach the fundamental research practice and the skills for success. We have about 1,000 students, and I've got an exceptional team of 5 additional lecturers. In 2021, with the whole COVID story, my team and I developed a document relating to our obviously emergency adoption of English classes, where the main focus was to keep students engaged online using a consistent structure in our teaching and learning approach. And obviously the importance was that the structure is the framework upon which you hinge everything. So if your lessons are well planned and set up, and they are implemented by excellent lecturers, your students are going to receive this very. All right, so this is our structure. So basically we have 5 times 45-minute sessions, which are split into 2 to 3 part lessons. And every week we follow the exact same structure. So we post all relevant weekly materials in PDF format. Each week starts with a coffee chat, which we focus on, which is to create and foster a secure and relaxed environment. And we sort of do general chatting and talking to students and how they're feeling, etc. And this is basically just to create an FRP community and rapport. Then the same structure is applied every week. We have an introduction to theory where we discuss it. So I'll say, for example, we're looking at comprehension tips this week. Then we take the theory, which chunked into smaller pieces. We give a Q&A session on it after they've read through the theory. It's usually in the format of a slideshow from PowerPoint. And then we give them a quiz. And after the quiz, we repeat the structures again. We basically don't deviate at all. We stick to the structure because the students are very comfortable. They know what's coming and they know what to expect. Then basically the challenges that we had with the structure in online teaching and learning was, how do we conquer the widely South African problem of load shedding and technology glitches and Wi-Fi, etc. So what we did is we looked at inclusivity and we moved our entire language lessons onto the WhatsApp platform. Then we also looked at teaching and learning certain language skills across an online platform are a problem, for example, listening skills. So what we did is we pulled in student voice notes. We made students do videos, which they really enjoyed. We looked at different types of reading text, more reading text and opportunities, and we are still working on this. Then we looked at, I'm sure the language lecturers will know this, how to combat boredom in students while teaching online and specifically while teaching grammar. The majority of our students are not mother tongue English speakers. So as a result, we have to go through grammar. And what we came up with, which was very well received by our students, is we designed FRP specific grammar videos, which had our lecturers acting in it. Students love seeing the lecturers act. They had a lot of hip hop music in it and humor, which worked very well. Then another challenge was, how do we avoid overwhelming students with too much information, because a lot of them complained that they were just overwhelmed with this whole online being bombarded with information. And so what we did is we chunked the information, which a lot of people have said before, into need to know and nice to know. We taught the need to know and we added the nice to know in as additional resources. And then, of course, our big focus is how to create an online community. We have a morning coffee chat. I will literally post little coffee cups. I'll ask them if they want cappuccino, etc. And it just gets received very well. We also have AA interventions on Google Forms, which Randy explained. We promoted competitions. We brought in an anthology. The students were told to write poems on COVID. It was brilliant. Their favorite music is discussed, inspirational videos, etc. Then basically what we have here is a slide where the students gave feedback. There are 1 or 2 complaints, really not a lot, but they really enjoy it. A lot of them go back, watch the grammar videos again, basically for the music, but still they really love it. And lastly, I just wanted to conclude with the following, that if you combine the above mentioned points of structure and consistency with a well-prepared lesson, and you have a kind and patient teaching manner because it's online, you will have a minimum of 70 to 90% students attending classes. And we can see that in our results and in our quiz results. Thank you very much.
Okay, good morning, conference delegates. I'm Nadine Darcy. As you can see on the cover of the presentation, I'm the Senior Coordinator of Chemistry in the Academic Development Center Access at the University of Johannesburg. Today, I would like to share one of the innovations from Foundation Chemistry Practicals, and this in response to the unanticipated closure of the university due to the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm going to begin with a short context to the information that I'm about to present on these Foundation Chemistry Practicals. Firstly, Foundation Chemistry is one of the first-year modules within the extended Bachelor of Engineering Technology and Electrical Engineering degree. Practical work is one of the defining components of this module. And most of the students in this program have never done practical work. So the closure of university placed a great strain on the teaching of practical work. Students, when the university closed, the students had done the safety video with the test, as this was a prerequisite to actually do the practicals. And they had also done practical 1. Right, this was insufficient practical work for the students to proceed to chemistry 1, because there is a certain competency in the range of chemistry specific practical skills to go on to chemistry 1. So this required some sort of innovation. So we had to think about how we would actually proceed with this practical program for the year. Now, there are some innovations that have been reported in the literature. This was a special edition of September last year, but it had not come out yet. And these were some of the innovations that were reported in the literature. The use of kitchen chemistry, which was almost impossible for us to do because of the resources available to the students. Simulated practical work, no, we don't have any simulations. And then I looked at some collaborative work, which hadn't actually gotten anywhere in terms of designing any innovations that we could actually use. Okay, and then in discussion with the HOD and the practical specialist, we decided that we would use the resources that we have available and just adapt them accordingly. So 2 of the most important adaptations was the presentation. Normally, the students have their practical schedule, they have the practical guide, they have a pre-practical discussion and a post-practical discussion. And then we decided that because they would not be able to do the procedure, we would use YouTube videos to actually demonstrate to the students the practical. Now, the next practical that the students were supposed to do was a one on chromatography. So what we did is we went online and we sourced a suitable YouTube video on chromatography. The video showed the procedure and the phenomena to be observed. And then what the students had to do is they had to link the setup with the picture within their Foundation Chemistry practical guide. Okay, after the students had completed viewing the video, all the prac discussions, the pre and the post-prac discussions, and they had completed the worksheet in the practical guide. They had to write an online test, practical test, which was for 20 marks in 20 minutes. And this covered the theory related to the practical work that had been done. I decided to take some of the data, in fact, the students' performance on the practical and chromatography, for those students that had done it online, and compared it to the students who had been exposed to the laboratory and laboratory teaching. If you look at the graph, you'll see that we have divided the marks into percentage intervals, above each of the bar graphs, you will see a number, which is the percentage of students who obtained a mark within that interval. And looking at the bar graph, I think that it showed that the students did quite well with the new innovation. Okay, and then with new innovations or adaptations, there are always advantages and disadvantages. We found that this was a convenient way of presenting the practicals. The students were able to watch the video numerous times, and normally in the lab, you can't redo the experiment numerous times. So this was actually quite a great advantage to them. Those that had connectivity issues could view as soon as they were able to connect. The disadvantages is that there was a lack of peer and group interaction, which we normally promote during the practicals. There was also the lack of opportunity to develop those skills, those practical skills, to set up the experiment. And then the assessment was a little bit of a problem, the online practical test, because the students were not used to the time limit that is set up on Blackboard. They didn't know that they have to submit at least a minute before the cutoff time. And that posed great problems. And then at the time when we did the practical, the students did not have data. So there were some that had data, some that didn't have data because the university had not issued the data as yet. And then there were also the connectivity issues. And I've come to the end of my presentation.
Good morning, colleagues. It's such an honor to be part of such a great conference. I'll mainly be presenting about how to upload lectures as YouTube videos. Well, not necessarily lectures, but content for classes like YouTube video. I'm Eric Bakama. I'm currently a lecturer and tutor coordinator in the Department of Quality and Operations Management under FYE. And I'm also a master's course supervisor. Without taking much of your time, I've seen already that as we started talking here, many of the colleagues have already presented about using YouTube and mainly using social media and YouTube. I've seen even Nadine as she presented, she mentioned about YouTube, which is quite interesting because these are some of the platforms that we know they were there. They've been there for a while, but we were waiting for COVID to come so that we started implementing them, unfortunately. But I'm not bragging. With my module and even in this presentation, I will show you some of the few results that we have used actually since 2017. We have started already with this practice. I'm the one who introduced it to the department. Back then, there was so much of support, but now that COVID has hit, I was really now, I will mainly tell you about how to upload the YouTube videos, then I will take you through a few things, then and that I will finish the presentation. So one of the few steps, when you just go on youtube.com, they will ask you generally to create an account. I believe as YouTube belongs to Gmail, to Google. So most of us already have a Gmail account. So every time that you join in there, you just use your Gmail account. They'll ask you to create a channel. My channel, I call it Let's Talk Operation Management because it's about operation management content only. So once you get on the very first page of YouTube, this is what you get, and then you will see that there's a button there on the top right. This is the button. It's like a small camera with a plus button. When you press there, you will be given the option to either upload a new video or to go live. If you decide to go live, it means that you will have your session live in class, live like whatever we are having with the Blackboard Collaborate Ultra. The upload video one is if you want to upload a video that students can access later. And this is what I'll mainly talk about in this part here. After clicking there, they will ask you to drag a video or to drop a video. So once you do that, you will keep in mind that your video will be private until it is published. So even if it has been dropped there, you just need, normally after dropping it or you select it in the folder, you will be given this option where, for example, you have to put a title. This is one of the project that my student did last year, around March. They were asked actually to talk about the COVID effect on the recreational, cultural, and sporting sector in South Africa. So it was quite an interesting assignment that I gave them. And I told them that the best assignment will be posted on our YouTube channel. So this is what we have done. Feel free to also go and watch this video just for you to give us maybe a few feedback on the work that you've been doing. Then you will also be given the option to put a description of the video. That one depends on you, but I always advise people to put a description so that people have an idea of what is expected for them. So after doing that, once your video is uploaded, you will have to, the next step will be monitoring your upload. Generally, when you click on your upload, you will see all the list of most of your upload from the most recent to the oldest one. Like right now, the most recent one has been the video that we uploaded, which was in October 2010. That was a content that we 2020. Yeah. Then once you do that, the visibility column here tells you if the video is already public, if people can watch it. The second part, there's restriction where there can be a copyright claim. For example, in the first video, the claim was that some of the students were using background music that is famous, and it sent a copyright claim to say that you need to remove that video, or the video won't be seen in some other part of the country or some other part of the world. But this is not a problem knowing the target people that we are having. And you also have a column about the date, a column about the number of views, where you can see how many people viewed your video. The advantage with this is because we have quite a bigger picture of, for example, I'm dealing with a class of 170. When I see already that I already have 270 views, I believe that the number of views is based on the number of time a user has watched the videos. If a user have watched a video 2 or 3 times, the number of views will be also added like that. So it means that almost, I believe that everyone in the class watched the videos, and there are some that add to watch and to rewatch the videos. Then you also have a comment section where you can just see the number of comments per video. Then you can also have the likes versus the dislike. Most of the time here, I feel like few people dislike the video, but so far you have an idea already. But when you look at the third video, for example, you say that there have been only 94% of people that have liked. But still, this is just for you to have an idea of how you can monitor now your upload and how things are going if they're doing well. Then next, this is the part that this is some of the feedback. This is a comment that I got from some of my students on the upload. You see that some of them are really commenting like, this video helped me a lot. Big thanks. Another one say thanks, that this was very helpful. We can ignore the previous request. Thank you so much. We even get some of our colleagues who just come and comment just to encourage the work that we've been doing and everything. Now, when you comment, you see like if you reply from a Let's Talk Operation Management, because that is a channel name. So it is not under my name as an individual, but I wanted to put it under the name of the channel itself. But feel free, it just depends on you, depending on the name of the content that you'll bring. Next, as you are monitoring your upload, this is just a small, this is a screenshot of a video that we uploaded in 2017. It was in Operation Management 1, we talk about single factor productivity. The video was published on the 2nd March 2017. And until now, we have noticed that the video has reached 17,000 people. And it's quite something that motivated us and encouraged us, because like I said, we started this long time ago, since 2017. But then because it was a platform that was not really, people were not familiar with it before the pandemic, we were still doing the work and everything. Find out that until now, even if we check until 2017, we can have probably 500 students in total, but now you're having 17,000 people that have watched, which we believe that it went even over the boundary of UJ, over the boundary of South Africa and everything. We got 183 likes and 5 dislikes. Then for more reading about that, there's been an article that we have written with some of the colleagues. It was the use of customized YouTube videos and internet to enhance academic performance of non-engineering students registered in the Faculty of Engineering at the South African University. So it was a case study based on UJ at this point. I wrote it with Mr. Charles Mkwakungu, myself, and Prof. Mboa. The paper has been published in 2019. Unfortunately, I cannot share the full paper. I don't know, this is not the platform, I believe. But if you want to get the paper, I can still share the link with you. It is being published at IEEE, just for you to have an idea of what we talked about and how we developed this work. Thank you so much. I hope that the presentation was quite insightful. Thank you.
Good morning, conference delegates. My name is Kaeli Shen, known as Kaya Keswa, working for Academic Development Access at UJ, facilitating physics for technology theory under the supervision of Mr. Kone, who presented earlier on. The 21st century brought some technological innovation, which has led to be a catalyst to success in a variety of fields in education. I want to do my presentation based on how Blackboard and Google Meet can be used same time as one of the technological innovations that are used in education. And this led to many institutions to introduce blended learning as their preferred platforms for teaching and learning. Before the FISMAS fall in 2015, the mode of delivery at UJ was formally introduced as blended learning, as that was actually presented on a report by Thea DeWitt in 2018. And the title of that report was One Twerk at a Time, okay, at Siapomele. Online learning made delivery of knowledge to students simpler, since students can access the information at any place. And then the 2020 pandemic forced institutions of higher learning to adopt full online learning in a very short space of time, while other institutions were still trying to get themselves within the blended learning. During this period, we experienced and we saw that many students went back home to areas where they find difficult to connect to the preferred platforms by their institutions. We will note that different institutions use different platforms when it comes to their blended learning, and UJ uses Blackboard. There are other platforms like Moodle, for example, meaning that this led to university staff to explore other avenues. Google Meet, Teams, Zoom, and many others came into place both for teaching and also for conducting meetings. For our teaching and learning, Google Meet became one of our preferred platforms for our lessons because it is easy to access. You can have up to a maximum of 100 students in one session, okay? And also the longest session that I had, it was about 1 hour, 15 minutes, meaning that it has, you have more time to conduct your session in Google Meet. What we actually do with when we are presenting using both platforms is that you prepare your lessons in a normal way. If you prefer to use videos, you will do videos. If you use slides, you will do slides. And as an instructor, you actually start the lesson on Blackboard and also start it on what? On Google Meet. Then you share the tab on from Google Meet. You share Google Meet tab from the one that is actually from Blackboard. By doing this, you allow students, both others, those that are having problems or connectivity issues with Blackboard, they will join via Google Meet. And those that are able to join via Blackboard will do so. But at the end, you will be sharing a tab that is from Blackboard with the students that are sitting on Google Meet. By doing so, we are not replacing any university platform, but this happened to be a complementary to what university was actually offering, and also try to achieve or reach many students as much as we can. Students needed to have a smartphone or a computer with internet connection. One can access Google Meet via World Wide Web or download Google Meet application, both for iOS and Android. But downloading the app wasn't that necessary for students because students were able to access it. They are able to access it via Google, just Google search. On my side, as a facilitator of the lesson, I actually create the session. I create the session on Google Meet and then share the link with the students. And students will just, only thing that they will need to do is to click on that link that has been set already, and they are ready to join the session. Other students, you'll notice that they are using phones that are not using the fast network, meaning even those with low, even those with are still on phones which are using second generations for their network, they are able to join the session, and it's easy to navigate. Students join the session via the link which is sent by the facilitator for the meeting. What is actually important is that students need to join, especially those are on Google Meet, they need to join earlier so that the facilitator of the meeting will be able to accept them before the start of the meeting. But even those that come late, they will be able to join because there is a notifying noise when there is someone joining on the other platform. Then you go to the tab for your Google Meet and accept those students that are coming in late. Using both platforms aims at reaching many students as much as we can for our live sessions. And one can also try this approach with platforms like Zoom and Teams, etc. I know that it works with Zoom, but you need to have that Zoom professional in case your session is longer than, let's say, 40 minutes. As I said earlier on, that this method was actually aiming at achieving or making sure that we don't miss or we minimize those students that are going to be left out on our live session. And we cannot guarantee that everything is actually smooth. However, we need to keep trying to achieve the best results out of the available technological resources. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kaya. Very informative session, colleagues. Thank you so much. Unfortunately, we only have about 3 minutes left for our Q&A. I'm going to quickly run through some of the chat, and I'm predicting that some of the chat will also run over into the tea break session.
Can I just ask them to open their videos, the last 5 presenters?
So for example, one of the questions that came through from Constance for George was one of the challenges that they have picked up in advising sessions has been that students tend to transcribe the narrated PowerPoints and videos, and it takes forever to complete the individual lectures. She's asking if George has dealt with this and if it's also ever occurred in his space. Colleen commented that the engagement techniques of Heidi's are very interesting, and I do agree. And the third one, Danny and Colleen are just agreeing. We cannot figure out what this world post-COVID will possibly look like in terms of teaching and learning. And it's interesting just in the reimagining of how we will actually be. We can't go back to the old ways, and we have to adjust to this new normal. So George, if you could just possibly quickly respond to that one in maybe like 30 seconds.
Thanks. I mean, I've not had such experiences.
Okay. All right. And there was a question from Welcome to Nadine, just about how interesting it would have been to see a sample of a YouTube video. So perhaps we could do one of those. Okay.
Okay. Good morning, Ansela. Yeah, I do have the YouTube video that I could show, but I think it's going to take some time because technologically, I'm not very good at doing that. But it is embedded somewhere in one of my files on my laptop.
Okay, okay. If you can send us that link.
I don't know if Welcome would like me to send the video to him. I wouldn't mind doing that. Or the link of the video.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes,
we can
yes,
do
Nadine.
this all afterwards.
Okay.
Thanks, Nadine. And then Eric, you have a lot of compliments on your on your slides, and Colleen especially said that she appreciates the advice of creating this kind of professional profile for the business versus you as a person. And yes, we all felt Eric's presentation was very useful.
Thank you.
Yes. Are there any other burning questions before we close for tea? In fact, I think we are 1 minute into our tea break. I'm going to suggest that we continue some of these conversations over the tea break. If people would just like to maybe unmute themselves and keep the conversation going until the next set of presentation starts in breakout room A and B. Is that fine?
And sir, can I just ask if our emails will be available to the conference delegates, and they're welcome to contact any of the 10 presenters for more information?
Yes, of course, Zainu. And maybe just take this opportunity to thank all of you. This was a huge team effort. And I personally, I know I can speak for all the other delegates. This was incredibly useful. The level of detail, the sort of depth of knowledge that all of you have, it has its ripple effects in terms of educating and informing the rest of us. So thanks again, all of you. And everyone else, enjoy a great tea break.
The University of Johannesburg, the future reimagined.